Melbourne wins another one.
The Golden State Warriors champions once again, back-to-back titles, 3 in 4 years, and the latest with a sweep.
This is the Sports Desk podcast on SYN.
Hey, welcome to Spodcasters Sports Desk podcast with Liam and Caleb. Welcome, Caleb.
Hey, that is great to be here, and I am really loving the new name, the Spodcast.
Yes, it's one of Ben's great creations.
It's pretty good.
He's a mastermind, that Benjamin.
Nice little hybrid there. Big week in AFL finals footy. I mean, our show is politics, but I think 100% of our show last fortnight was about footy. This week we're going to tone it back and probably only go like 90% AFL.
Because the finals were on for the first week of the finals.
What did you make of the finals, Liam? What did you make of them? Because I am a firm believer that it was probably one of the worst weeks of finals for a neutral fan. I obviously support the Doggies. It would have been a great week if you supported Melbourne or if you supported Tigers, maybe if you supported, I don't know, GWS. But for neutrals like me, didn't really enjoy it. Thought there wasn't much in it apart from maybe the Collingwood West Coast game.
See, I would have to disagree, mostly because I think you people look at the scores and the skills, but in reality, we had a Sydney derby for the second time in the finals. Mm-hmm. A great banner, by the way, by a Sydney GWS fan.
What was it? I didn't see.
Sydney-born, not relocated.
Yeah.
Which I'm surprised it took so long for one. I thought that was beautiful.
It was good.
You know,
I'd be impressed with the AFL exec that designed that one. Yes. Or came up with it, you know.
But also, you saw, Melbourne's first final appearance in 12 years. Also, Gary Ablett, but I think AFL, the media's got that all wrong. Painting Ablett as a good guy in that whole story of him getting back to the finals.
Not a fan of the Gary Ablett move? Is that what you're saying?
100% not a fan of the Gary Ablett move. But it was great seeing Melbourne in the finals again, and they should have won by more than what they won by.
Definitely.
Dominant display. GWS again, and Sydney played one of their worst games you'll ever see Sydney play against the Giants at their best. You saw Dusty put on an absolute clinic in front of 91,000 people. 2 games in a row had over 90,000 people there. That's a Melbourne game. When does Melbourne get over 90,000 people?
I see what you're saying, but just because there was a big crowd, I think it was still pretty boring games. We had the Richmond game was predictable at best, I think. I think once they started piling goals, it was like, okay, yep, expected this. The Melbourne-Geelong game was some of the worst skills, I reckon. As you pointed out, Melbourne should have won by more, and their skill errors in that third quarter.
It's going to cost them next week against Hawthorn. I'm calling it now.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The Sydney game, I had a friend that fell asleep in the second half. They scored 2 goals by 3/4 time, so that was appalling. And any game where Buddy can't really find his hands on the ball, I think it's a shame, and you wonder what could have been.
Yes, but then we also got the great game over in the West Coast Collingwood game.
Yeah, that was...
Or, as what Victorian people are calling it, the boo game, because apparently West Coast supporters booed everything that happened.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. West Coast don't have a very good track record for booing, do they? They booed Adam Goods, and they...
Ablett also got booed on the weekend as well on Friday.
Strange.
You saw Dangerfield play his first game for Melbourne. I thought he did really well playing for the Demons.
The big 3 kind of misfired, didn't they?
They were. They've misfired all year. That Geelong season in a nutshell has been a failure. But overall, I thought it was a good first week of football. Got you nice and amped up for the next week, which you got, Hawthorn versus Melbourne. I think it's the first time they played since Hawthorn walloped them in the 88 grand final.
Wow.
And you got the Giants taking on probably the biggest club, the best place you can have a young side to do, play Collingwood in the final series.
Yeah. Careful where you say biggest club. I think Giants are still, as I said
Collingwood,
before. The biggest club. Collingwood, the biggest club. Yeah, that'll be a good one. That'll be excited by next week. Hopefully we can dish up something that's a little bit better.
Yes. Speaking of the Giants, superstar, All-Australian, Toby Greene, came back, looked like it hasn't been gone. But something that also hasn't been gone was his kicking technique. Not shot for goal, as in instead of pushing off for the mark, he uses his foot. We saw it famously last year against Luke Dalhouse. And I was one of the ones who thought he shouldn't have got suspended because it looked like he was just trying to push off and accidentally got him in the head. I believe as long as it's still legal and he doesn't get a free kick against for him, do it. Keep it in your arsenal until they actually go out and ban it. Do it as much as you like.
I do take an issue with it. I think the first example with Dalhouse, you could have almost made an argument that it was instinctual, that, he was just sort of... the foot went out. It was instinctual. But as we saw on the weekend, did it 3 times. It's now to the point where it's like he's using it to his advantage. I get that, hey, it may be in the rules, but it's an ugly look for the game, and I don't think any defender would appreciate having studs going into them. And the argument that the knee is just as bad and probably could do more damage, I disagree with. I'm not obviously not medically trained on the issue, but I just think having studs going in is a terrifying look for the game, and didn't sit well with me. Obviously, I have underlying biases because the first one was done to Luke Dalhouse, but he's going off to Geelong anyway. So
don't really care about Luke Dalhouse anymore. Overall, I think it's as long as it's in the rule book. I made a strong stance on actually the Flying Up podcast every week about how much I hate the cowed punch. If let's focus on trying to get the punch up, because I made a big point, but the fact that Devon Smith didn't get suspended for what he did.
Yeah, that was
how long do I have to wait for someone to die on the footy field before they actually do something about people trying even attempting to punch someone?
Yep.
So I think that's got to go out the game first before this kick.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. But I think, I just didn't like the look of it, and maybe it is because I have an underlying disliking for Toby Greene. Hey, what did you make of the bye last week? Because 2 weeks ago we recorded the show. We recorded it just before the bye, and I don't know. Did you find that you were a bit bored, or what?
I was
what were your
extremely
thoughts?
bored.
Yep.
I've stopped caring about the EJ Whitten Legends game.
Yep.
It's such a scripted event. It's so bad now.
Yeah.
It looks like Adelaide also didn't care. They used a fake camera shot. They made it look like they had crowd.
Did they do that?
Yeah, they used a fake camera shot. But one of their ideas, and it came up on sliding doors on AFL.com, that next year they might introduce the wild card round. I think, and NFL does it. I'm pretty sure they do a wild card. So it's going to be 7th versus 10th and 8th versus 9th. For example, last week you would have seen the Giants play Port Adelaide at Spotless Stadium.
Cool.
And Geelong play North Melbourne at probably the MCG.
Yep.
And the winner of those two would have played Melbourne and Sydney in the first, technical first week of the finals.
And do you know when the last time was that they shook up the finals?
They've had the top 8 for a while, but I know they've changed to the current top 8 system in 2000.
So it'll be like roughly 20 years since they last changed the final system. I think it could do with a tinker. I agree with you. I don't know whether... it's a good... I think it's a good idea, but I also don't like the idea that teams... I think Port Adelaide didn't deserve to play finals this year. I think their plateau at the middle, and then obviously when they dropped off at the end, I think that warranted them missing out on the finals. And then my stance with this is teams that finish, bar the Dogs, teams that finish outside the 4 don't have much of a chance of making a tilt at the finals. So unless you've got a really even comp, putting 2 extra teams into the finals isn't going to shake up the comp that much, unless, let's say, we see Melbourne win this weekend, or unless we see GWS win this weekend, and that puts forward an argument that the comp is maybe more even and we need more teams making that finals. Well,
it could be because the last few years, I think, since 2014, because I know in 2014 Fremantle and Geelong both got knocked down straight sets,
yep.
And then Sydney and Hawthorn the next 2 years, so that was 4 in 3 seasons.
Okay, yeah.
So maybe they're thinking it's much more closer, but I'm just happy it's not like it used to be with you play the grand final, and if the premier team loses, or the team that finished first loses, they get a chance to challenge.
Yeah.
So many grand finals have changed because of that rule. But I think I think you should support the other teams. There's more clubs now, so let more than one, maybe top 9 or top 10, so more clubs have a chance at finals.
Okay, yeah, interesting point. Quick one. On contracted players, there was a few calls.
You know I don't like this, yeah.
There's a few calls, and you'd probably be joining them in saying that the Australian Football League, AFL, needs to clamp down a little bit tighter on agents talking to players that are within contract. Obviously, we saw this year a lot of managers going and talking to Tom Lynch throughout the year.
He's coming out of contract.
Coming out of contract, but yeah, it seems to be it's creeping more and more into the game.
How many players this year alone have you heard, Essendon's targeting blah blah who's in contract, someone's targeting someone who's in contract. Like apparently Geelong's looking at Todd Goldstein who's under contract, and Melbourne's looking at North Melbourne's other ruckman who's in contract.
I see my issue with... So are you suggesting that maybe if clubs did get in contact with contracted players, there'd be financial repercussions or fines or something like that?
I feel like there should be like a third-party system where either the player management or the club, goes to the AFL like, hey, yeah, my dad's really sick. I would like a trade. Explore my options back to, just say Melbourne, of course, because everyone gets traded to Melbourne. Back to trade to Melbourne. So the AFL's like, okay, cool, and then let's all the Victorian clubs know, hey, this player's available if you want to talk to him. So it's an even thing for both. So it's not just a good example for Fremantle at the moment is Lockie Neal.
Yep.
maybe moving to Brisbane with a year left on his contract. And that's a completely different story because I think a lot of Freo supporters are more happy. I know it sounds weird that Lachie Neale might be leaving because a second-round draft pick plus a first-round draft pick for Fremantle, so that's a win-win for them.
Yeah, and we digress, but where does that sit for you as a Freo fan, Lachie Neale, being contacted while he's still in contract, and B, potentially leaving for maybe a pick 5?
Well, see, personally for me, I thought that was the fact that he's still got a year left. I think is so stupid because he could leave next year, and Freo gets next to nothing.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest issues with contracted players, it's a bit of a it's a catch-22 type thing. Because when a player wants to leave, everyone's like, or when a club gets a good player, it's business. That's what's the nature of the game. But when a club says no to a contracted player's leaving, everyone turns on the club.
Yeah.
Why don't you let him go? Let him do what he wants to do. I think clubs the players have more say than the club.
They do.
Which should be the other way around.
Yeah, I think the players definitely hold the power at the moment. We see that with them nominating clubs. You know, the players really hold the cards and hold the chips. Let's move.
Oh, sorry, one sec.
No, yeah, please.
In the NBA, it's very hard to break a contract. Extremely hard to break a contract.
Yep.
So even if you're looking at someone for a few years, and Dangerfield's probably always in Geelong's eye when he was at Adelaide. But I think why they contracted, leave them alone. Just makes it easier.
Yeah. See, for me, I think even if they put in structures stopping it to happen, I don't think it'd stop it. I think that it'd just happen behind closed doors a lot more, and you wouldn't hear about it. And I don't think it would stop it from happening because, as you said, for clubs like Fremantle, if they're getting rid of a Lachie Neale, they're going to have to. They probably want Lachie Neale to be approached by clubs while he's still in contract. You know what I mean?
To get the pick 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Moving away from AFL, actually on Friday, while Melbourne and Geelong played in front of 91,000 people, over just across the road, the Melbourne Storm played the South Sydney Rabbitohs in one of the best NRL finals of all time, in front of 17,000 people. Was it a smart idea to play the NRL final on a Friday night when Sunday was free?
See, I would have preferred them to play on a Saturday night. I know that Collingwood West Coast were playing. However, Melbourne, the sporting capital of the world, were just begging for some kind of live sport to go and watch. The VFL was on Saturday afternoon. I know you went and you said it was quite a good game. However, I think if you put the Storm game on Saturday night, where there's no other AFL live games in Melbourne that night, I think you would have drawn a bigger crowd. Someone like me who doesn't really get into the NRL very much, I definitely would have been like, yeah, I'll go and watch that.
Yeah, because they did this. Not the first time they've done this year. They also did it with So Melbourne Storm's first home game of the season was the same time as the round 1 game between Richmond and Carlton.
Yeah.
So it's not the first time they've tried to. I don't know if it's a smart idea. I agree. Again, it's a business. AFL is trying to take the rugby league supporters, so why rugby league not try to take the AFL supporters?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Obviously, I guess it's not as big yet for even rugby league to consider a second Melbourne team, but
is there anything wrong with the NRL acknowledging that the AFL exists and being like, you know what, we're in Victoria. AFL's probably got the stronghold in Victoria. We want to get as many people to the game as we can. Let's put it on the Saturday night where there's a window. I reckon it was a missed opportunity for the NRL.
I would agree that I think it's very risky for a final. Like the round, the one in round 1, AFL round 1, was smart, but you're risking a lot of big crowd for a final. And, 29,000 people, 17,000 people on a 29,000 seat stadium. So there's more than 10,000 seats left, which I don't know if I don't know the viewership numbers, so maybe I've got a feeling it might have been a loss for the NRL, but I don't think it was that bad.
Yeah, and I don't know. I watched the highlights as well afterwards, and it was a cracking game.
It was fantastic.
There was Munster kicked the
Big
field
Munster,
goal
yeah.
right at the end. He doesn't normally kick for field goals. So, yeah, I think it was disappointing because after watching that, I was like, geez, I wish I could have gone to that game live and, got around it.
And then, like you said the Melbourne game was bad, but they had a cracker rugby league game on. So maybe I still think it was a smart idea, but you do have a good point saying if that was on Saturday, a lot more people would have watched that cracking game. Speaking of Melbourne,
they've just recently announced that there will be a second NBL team. It'll be based southeastern suburbs. This will be obviously in conjunction with Melbourne United, who already exists. They're the reigning premiers of the NBL competition. How does this sit with you? Do you think it'll be a successful? Do you think Melbourne has the want for a second NBL team, or is it a bit bit out of the blue?
At one point there was like 50 different NBL teams in Melbourne. I'm just going to look at Melbourne City for a good example at the moment, and they're as much as on-field success, what kind of on-field success the Melbourne City's had the last few years, Melbourne Victory is so far in front in terms of crowd numbers. Most of the lowest crowds of the season are home games with Melbourne City involved.
Yep.
So I'm looking at that because they're both going to play games at the Melbourne Arena,
Mm-hmm.
or formerly known as Hisense Arena, but yeah, the Melbourne Arena.
Yep.
So do we really want to see a LA Lakers versus LA Clippers type thing going on in Melbourne?
Yeah. I'm a little bit indifferent to the NBL. I don't know. I watched a couple of games one year and I got into it a little bit, and then the problem that I found with the NBL was that if I'm given the option to watch either the NBL or the NBA, I'm always going to pick the NBA.
100%, yep.
And I think the NBL, when it was at its peak, was when we didn't have access to watch the NBA, but now we've got live streams.
I also think social media for the NBL has been terrible. Like, you don't know, like, look at the AFL app. The AFL app is the best invention of all time. Because you can be like, oh, yep, that plays on that plays on that plays on that. NBL app, you've got nothing.
Yep.
There's no indication of how good a player's gone. There's no good of, even the fixturing's just all off. So for me, I think maybe wait a bit.
Yep.
Because it wasn't only just 10 years ago the South Melbourne Dragons left the competition because NBL was in absolute scrambles at the time. So many teams left.
I think the way that... this will sound like I'm just going back on everything that I've just said. I think the way that Australian basketball is going, though, it's probably at its strongest.
Yeah, for a while.
With players in the NBA, Bogut playing now for Sydney Kings. I think it's a good move. I think they can't get complacent with where it's at. And, hey, maybe if there is a Melbourne derby, might pull some crowds, and I might even go and watch. Before we wrap up the podcast, I'm going to throw a little question to you. Ooh. This is unprepped. I've just come across a tweet, and this is very fascinating. I tend to agree. Robbo's tweeted about Elliot Yeo. He played a cracking game last night. Probably will win the best and fairest for the Eagles, and probably play in the grand final, depending on how it pans out. He didn't make the All-Australian team. Do you think Yeo was a bigger omission than Phil Davis?
Well, Phil Davis didn't even make the squad of 40, though.
Neither did Yeo.
Did he?
No, didn't make the... Oh, well...
I think he did.
He made the 40, sorry. Didn't make the All-Australian team.
I think...
Do you think it's bigger that Phil Davis missed out on the 40?
No, I think Phil Davis mostly because Yeo spent most of the year as a midfielder. Last year when he got it, he was off half-back.
Mm-hmm.
So there was too many midfielders for him to play in the midfield in the All-Australian squad.
Okay.
I think Dangerfield was lucky to make it. Like, I think so many people could take Dangerfield's spot.
Yeah, Dangerfield was a little bit of a head-scratcher for me.
Name recognition.
Titch Edwards was another one that I kind of scratched my head at, but then you look at the success of Richmond and you got to put some Richmond players in there.
I'm pretty sure, was it Dunkley that didn't make it? I probably would have...
I was going to say McRae from the Dogs.
McRae was the one that made it?
McRae was stiff not to get in.
Yeah.
But, we digress. So
do you think he was unlucky? I think there was too many people in the mid. He's not an A-grade midfielder yet.
I reckon Yeo would have slotted very nicely onto the halfback in the All-Australian team. As for whose spot he would have taken, maybe a sidebar more. Yeah.
Why we have a few more minutes? Talking about All-Australian.
Yep.
Because I didn't talk about it. I don't think they spoke about it on the Sports Desk either. Ben Brown.
Yeah.
Ben Brown.
What does he have to do?
Like, he led the Colin the entire season, apart from when, unfortunately Richmond played Gold Coast.
Yep.
But he did not make it. And they're talking about this team like it's a team that's going to play another team. I remember hearing him talk about it post thing.
Yeah.
The fact that he didn't make it was an absolute disgrace, and that took me off All-Australian, the fact that Ben Brown did not make the team.
Yeah, it's questionable, but I suppose that's what all the All-Australians are there to do. It's just to generate discussion, isn't it?
Well, actually, last one about All-Australian. Should there be a Sydney and Queensland selector? There's a selector in every state, Victoria, Western Australia.
I haven't looked into it, but I'd have to see some kind of stats that suggest that maybe there hasn't been enough Sydney or
Well, there's more. Well, there's definitely no one from Queensland anytime soon.
Yeah,
maybe with Brisbane coming up, but
maybe
with Phil Davis not missing out, maybe it's saying that. Or should we go in NBA fashion, having a second team?
As in like an East and West kind of conference?
No,
or like
NBA has an NBA first team, NBA second team.
Oh, yeah. But then again, I think that's the purpose of the squad of 40,
Because
I think.
I find the squad of 40 pointless, to be honest.
Yeah?
I think because it was released Monday and then Wednesday was the All-Australian. Like, I just think the squad of 40 is so
So you
pointless.
don't think there's enough time?
No, I just don't see the point in the squad of 40. Just release the 22 that All-Australian.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's more catalyst for discussion, because then you got people missing out on the 40 that gets people talking about the AFL, and then ultimately that's what the AFL wants. They want more people talking about it.
I also think Fife was stiff for missing out on the team of 40 at least.
Yeah,
like he had an absolutely phenomenal year. That's all the time we have for this spodcast. I won't be here.
I love it every time I hear it.
I won't
It's
be
great.
here the next time. Wait, I might be here the next time we do it. I am here the next time we do it, actually. I got my days wrong. And after that, we'll be
Awesome.
looking at the two teams playing off in the 2018 AFL Grand
I
Final.
want to be a bumper edition. Can't wait for that.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. It's been lovely.
Yeah, make sure you tune into Sports
Yes.
Desk throughout the week as well. You know, we're on live. It's 9
Monday,
to 10.
yeah, 9 to 10, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
So, what day are you on?
Wednesday, back to the politics.
Nice
Love the good old
one.
politics.
Yeah, make sure you tune in on Wednesday. You can catch more of Liam. I'm not on there, but yeah,
Big loss. Shattering.
we will rebuild. Pleasure.